Good morning, everybody. To those who may be online and to those who will eventually watch this recording, thanks for very much for being here, for listening. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel. We have, I think, some very good, relevant topics in the past and upcoming. So do feel free to watch this. Watch the videos. We're also working on converting this to a podcast. So stay tuned on that, but we thank you for this. So, somebody might ask, how do we pick our topics? Well, first of all, I'm old, have lots of experience, talk to a lot of people, and we think about things that are relevant. So, this one is relevant. Let me give you a quick story. I was meeting with somebody recently to talk about some growth plans, husband and wife business, been in business for a long time. They were struggling to get some financing, struggling to understand their business from a accounting and financial reporting perspective, having a nice lunch, talking about those things, talking about my experience, talking about ways we help clients, having a nice conversation, getting a better understanding of their business, what their goals were, what some of their issues were. We were talking about it. And right in the middle of the lunch, the person was you could see it building. The person was getting a little more stressed out about things going on in their office, and in the middle of the lunch, really frankly, before we were finishing the conversation, the person said, you know what, I need to leave. I need to get back to the office. Their emails are building up, things are happening. I just got to get back to the office. So, as we're talking about ways to grow their business, as we're talking about ways to relieve the pain that they were feeling as they were a very hands-on business owner, husband and wife business. As we're talking about all of those things, the overwhelming feeling of getting their hands back into the business overcame. The person literally just sort of right in the middle of a sentence got up and left and went back to their office to continue on their work. And I say that not at all to offend or criticize that person. I understand how that feels, but it highlighted the fact that maybe, just maybe, that person was being limited in their growth plans by being so hands on that they weren't actually effectively putting systems and processes in place and getting the help they need. And I know from talking to a lot of people, and there are a lot of ways that this is manifested, but there are a lot of business owners out there that are struggling with this. And so I wanted to talk about that today in this session. So that's the opening story, and maybe that's relevant to you. Maybe that resonates with you. But let me just stop now and say hello again. Thanks. My name is Carl Baker. I run a firm called Baker CFO Advisory. We are a modern accounting firm that provides fractional CFO services, accounting services, tax services. We're here to help growing businesses do what they can. Somebody might say, well, you're an accountant, a CPA. Why are you talking about this? We're not talking about taxes. We're not talking about debits and credits and accounting systems. Right. But before we get to some of those issues, we sometimes I think it's important to talk about bigger picture issues, things that might be holding your business back. And we're going to talk about that. So again, hello again. My name's Carl Baker, and thank you for being here. I also say thank you to my assistant, Erica, who helps me with the outreach to people. If you found us today, either live in recording on social media, it's probably because of her help. So, Erica, thank you for that. Thank you for listening to this. And I hope in this 30-40 minute session, you get a few nuggets that might give you some ideas, might cause you to think about possibly ways you might be able to advance your business. And so that's why we do this today. So let's actually just move into the session. And as you see in the notes, we have a chat box. If you have questions, Feel free to put those questions in there. You can see my phone number. You can see my email address. You can also find us. Our website is buried in my email, bakercfoadvisory.com. If you don't want to put a public question out there, I am more than happy to have a conversation with anybody privately. Obviously, initial conversations free of charge. Happy to have a conversation. We're just trying to give ideas and establish relationships with businesses that are growing or wanting to grow and looking for help as they do that. And we have lots of other sessions where we've talked about other ways to contribute to your growing business. So let's move into the session today. So we are talking about ways that if you're a growing business, challenging you as business owners to ask the question, are you too hands-on? What could you be doing? Are you too hands-on? And what does that mean? And why does that matter? Is it possible that it could be a reason as to why your business is not growing the way you want it to grow? You're not achieving what you're wanting to achieve. So that's what we're going to talk about today. One of the things that I want to say is, again, why does this matter? You might be a single member owner, a husband and wife, a small ownership group, and you are doing all of the work yourself, and that may be okay to you. And you may be earning the income that you want to earn. You may be achieving what you want to achieve. You may be accomplishing what you want to accomplish in the community, all doing it the way you want to do. And that is a-okay, no problem. There is nothing wrong with being a hands-on business owner. And certainly I don't mean to denigrate that concept. But if you are wanting to achieve growth, if you're wanting to eventually navigate to an exit plan, maybe you're wanting to add new services, add new location, there's only so much time in the day. There's only so much you can do as a business owner. And we talk in terms of working on the business, not in the business. And working in the business is a-okay if you're achieving what you want to achieve. I would say that probably means you have a job, not running a business, which again is a-okay if that's what you want. But we're talking about a situation where you're banging your head against the wall and you're wanting to do something different. You're not quite sure. So we're just going to identify a few of those issues. So we're going to walk through 3 stages and several subpoints. The 3 stages, this first one, recognizing what that bottleneck is. Number 2, how to step back from the way that you're running a business, some ideas around that. And then what does it mean if you have stepped back? Does that mean that you step away from the business? No. Does it mean you necessarily work less? Maybe, but maybe not. And so the third stage would be, what is your new role in this new way of running a business? So those are the 3 things that we're going to talk about. And again, let's just continue on that. I just wanted to set the stage, what the 3 stages were. So number 1, recognizing the bottleneck. I sort of talked about a lot of this, but if you're here today, if you're thinking about these things, then you've probably recognized there might be a better way to do it. You have a firm grip. You're not sure if how much that is affecting your business, but you are thinking maybe it is. And I would just say, frankly, as I said it earlier, you probably have a job, not a business. If you stepped away from the business, and I've heard other people say this in this subject, if you stepped away from the business for, say, 6 weeks, what happens? Does your business fall apart? Does your client service stop? Does it all stop? And that's a leading indicator. And you don't have to wait 6 weeks to see that happens, but that's a leading indicator of an issue. You will see I probably a little more than in past sessions. I am going to refer to some notes in my preparation. I had a few things that I really want to make sure I say, so I'm just being vulnerable with you, transparent. I am probably going to refer to a few notes today, so bear with me on that. So as we step into this, is the what are some of the signs of the bottleneck? And we'll walk through a few of these. The cost of being too involved, and I've alluded to this already. If everything depends on you, the business cannot grow beyond you. There's only so much time. There's only so many ways you can do this. Just yesterday, I was talking with somebody, and that person was a husband and wife business. At one point, the husband was doing all of the work, and it was limiting that person's ability to grow the business, to serve the clients that they had, the customers that they had. They were doing all the accounting. They were working at 2 in the morning. And at some point, even the person took a mini step and asked the wife to become involved in the business and do some of the things. We talk in terms of all the different roles. And that person even mentioned something that I say all the time: wearing all the hats. If you're wearing all the hats of the business, then that's a leading, and that may be fine. But if you're wearing all the hats and yet banging your head against the wall, asking why we're not growing, that's very possibly it. So, what are those hats? Those hats include advancing the vision, overseeing all the operations, serving customers, managing staff, managing clients, project management, etc. And then the actual finances of the business. That's another role. And for those of you who know the entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, what I just did is summarize the EOS, the way EOS articulates a corporate structure for somebody like this. So the cost of being involved, if everything depends on you, then you're not going to be able to grow. Things will happen. Growth will stall. Teams will wait. There will be bottlenecking. If that's something that resonates with you, then you're possibly in that situation. I'm going to pause here and say, and we'll reference it a couple times, I'm doing a session today, giving you some ideas, but we have a very nice series of white papers. And go to our website, Baker CFO Advisory. You'll see a link where we will address this in further examples. We'll put some nuggets in there. We'll also follow up with some case studies on an industry basis. And so just pay attention to those. Sign up for those newsletters. You might get a few nuggets out of that. All right, signs that you are the bottleneck. And we've talked about a lot of these things, but what are some of those signs? If you're reviewing, approving everything, if your projects pause when you're away, if you're always the fallback, again, not a bad thing if you're accomplishing everything you want to accomplish, but if you're wearing all those hats and yet also asking why growth isn't happening, then those are signs you are the bottleneck. And you have an opportunity to evaluate ways you can run your business differently. Some people say, "Well, I do everything because I need to maintain control." If uh, applying the concept, if you want something done right, do it yourself, and that can be taken to an extreme example. But control means that you're doing all of the work, and we suggest oversight, which means that you're working on the business, not in the business, and you're building systems to make sure the work is being done effectively to your standards, to your tone, to your way. The business is running in the way that you're wanting to run the business and meet customer needs, but you're not necessarily doing all of that. And I allude to it in this slide. We'll talk about it a little more, but it doesn't mean that you'll be less involved. It just means you'll be involved differently. Why do founders struggle to let go? And some of it might be obvious. You might be living this, but again, applying that concept. If you want it done right, make sure that you do it yourself. I understand that. I relate to that. I have a small business myself. I've worked in many places where the leaders feel like it's hard to train staff. It's hard to bring people up. It's hard to get stuff done when you're working with people that are early in their training. Sometimes it's just easier to let to just do things yourself. And that's okay for a while. But what are some of the other things that we say in this slide? They hold back from delegating because they fear losing quality, making costly mistakes. Ooh, that's a big one. If you make a costly mistake, customers get upset, then you are concerned about losing business, everything falls apart. So it's just sometimes easier. And I worked in public accounting for 25 years, and the public accounting industry is very much a leveraged based industry. And as I went through the ranks, I worked with people that I was training, pulling up, and I talked in terms of pulling people up the corporate ladder, which is a cliche, but you're really pulling people up to broaden their skill sets. And people that are struggling with that are struggling because they're trying to get work done. They're overwhelmed with work. They're trying to get work done. It's tempting to just do the work yourself. But I've always had to instill the concept that if you are focused on the training and you're doing that to the best of your ability, it's hard for a while, but eventually, possibly even just a few months, that person that you're training is going to start to take on the skill set, and suddenly the workload pyramid expands, and suddenly you don't have to do it all, and you see light bulbs going on and those things. But it's very hard to do that if you're not instilling that culture of pushing down work and working at your level. I use a phrase, work at your level of incompetency. And if you've mastered a task, then make sure that you're giving that task to somebody else so that they can learn and develop that skill set. So rambling a little bit there, but it's key to mentoring people. It's key to developing the skill set. It's key to infusing your corporate institutional skill set among more people. Over time, not letting go becomes the bigger risk, as we say here. It will limit the growth. It will overwhelm you as the leadership, and again, everybody just will depend on you. So I ask in some of my notes, I actually say, ask yourself, why are we doing business? Are we doing business to have a job, or are we doing business because are we doing this business because we are trying to give back to the community? We're trying to solve a community problem. We're trying to spend our time doing things we like. But also, I think it's important to understand that part of the value of what you're doing is not just to serve customers, but it's also to expand your staff's skill set. And we've talked about that a few times here, but keep in mind, some of the important aspects of running a business is not just customer service, but it's also giving opportunities to staff and mentoring them and training them so that more people can have that skill set. So if you're doing everything yourself, then you're not growing your staff, you're not growing your people. And I think that's an important component of running a business. All right, so moving into stage two, if you're in agreement that this might be an issue, what do you need to do? How do you step back, very importantly, without losing control? Well, it's putting strategies in place. It's putting systems in place. It's about developing a rhythm or a cadence. It's about letting go, making sure everything gets done effectively, documenting the way we do things. And if you have listened to any of my other sessions, you've heard me say the way. So there is a way that our business does things, and you have established that way. You have the right to establish that way, but instilling the way into the people that are working with you through documented protocols, documented systems, and then just making sure managing to those ways through a rhythm of quality control, a set of processes. That's important, and that's the overarching introduction to stage two. Where will you still need to be involved? As we say here, you're not disappearing, you're not kicking back, putting your feet up and just letting everybody do everything and then hoping it all works out. You're instilling systems. So you're wanting to make sure that your strategic direction is advancing, that your team is performing at the way that you expect. You absolutely have the right to make sure that happens. And that certainly sometimes involves tough conversations, but that is the role of leadership. That's the role of owning a business, and then it all sort of translates into financial health. So, putting systems in place, putting checks in place to see that the financial health, team performance, strategic direction is all being preserved, managed, and advancing respectively. So you can design how do you stay involved, and it certainly doesn't mean being involved everywhere. And going back to that EOS operating structure, if I were to put a slide up vertically, you have the visionary at the top. Below that, you have the operations person, the operations leader that is making sure all the systems are in place. And then below that, you have the hiring process, the customer service process, the staffing, the business development process. Sorry, staffing would be a part of the hiring, and then the financial aspect and ensuring the financial health of the organization is staying in place. One of the things that I wanted to say here is, and I've sort of alluded to it. You're not just turning this process over to people that you don't know, as I said, and just making sure and hoping that it all works out. You're actually putting these systems in place. That's actually what running a business is. That's a distinction between running a business and having a job. Otherwise, you could just work for somebody and perform your role. Uh, Delegation outcomes. Oh, delegate outcomes, not tasks. Excuse me. I heard this in my reference yesterday. As my person I was talking to, the husband who had given some of the business tasks to the person's wife, he actually said, "I didn't tell her how to do all of this. I wanted to have her learn it, but I didn't tell her all the micro tasks." Now, you could insert a joke here and say that's a husband being wise and not telling the wife what to do. And I certainly get that. But the concept applies. Delegate to the outcomes. What are the results that we need to do? What are the systems that we need to put in place to make sure those outcomes are happening? And to an extent, putting processes and protocols in place, but it doesn't necessarily mean managing all of the tasks. Give your team a clear goal, define the guardrails, allow them the space to deliver. Over time, again, those overarching goals will evolve into a set of tasks, into a set of protocols and processes. I think it's important to memorialize those with processes, protocols, because inevitably people leave and somebody else can come in and carry on that role. And that's important to have those protocols in place, but that will create the environment where accountability and capability can grow, and you'll see that expansion. All right, build systems with controls, not checklists. And when I was preparing for this, I thought it's very easy for me to say, and somebody might push back and say, "Well, yeah, but I don't want to turn over." Thinking in terms of finances, and it's just an example. I don't want to turn over my finances. If I give somebody access to my bank account, suddenly I'm exposed. I'm vulnerable to fraud. I'm vulnerable to theft. So certainly those are real risks. But we're talking about putting systems in place along with proper controls, and I'm using finances as an example, and certainly we can talk about that. What processes and protocols and controls do you need to put in place so that somebody has the tools they need to do the job that you used to do, accessing bank accounts, managing cash in that example. But we could also talk about managing the sales process, managing customer outreach, managing project management. So the same thing that could apply to accessing bank accounts could also apply to other things. But putting controls in place so that fraud doesn't happen, so that mistakes don't happen. Controls are there not just to prevent fraud and theft, but also to prevent the risk of mistakes happening, which could be just as catastrophic as fraud and theft. So your job as a leader is to put roles in place, statements of protocol, statements of procedures, and then let KPIs be developed, or develop KPIs so that things can keep moving without you. So if you're navigating through this process, you have put controls in place, you've put processes in place, you have leveraged a lot of your work. Now we talk in terms of what is the cadence now to maintain quality? What is the rhythm? Does that mean you have weekly meetings, daily checks? Maybe not everything. Certain things warrant daily mitigation, daily check, daily quality control. Certain things will require weekly check-ins, weekly management, weekly quality control steps, and then obviously stepping back from that, quarterly, monthly, semi-annually, annually. The point is putting processes in place that make sense, that are warranted, so that things are happening on a regular basis, so that the business continues to advance. I'm a big believer in the entrepreneurial operating system. I'm also a big believer in another system called the Great Game of Business, based on a business here in my home community, Springfield, Missouri. Love to talk to anybody about those things. Look up books. There's plenty of books, materials. Love to have a conversation about any of those things. Those are some corporate models that one could use to develop that cadence and those processes. Uh, so those are some good ideas. But the some of the points are: give teams space to operate, establish the priorities, and then make sure that with your rhythm of check-ins, that those processes are staying in place and continuing. One of the other things that I would say is, uh, well, I'll talk about that in a second. Know what metrics matter, and of course, I'm a financial person, and certainly I have lots of operating experience as well. But we gravitate towards giving examples that are in the financial metrics matter. So creating dashboards to track in terms of managing the cadence, the rhythm. So we give some examples. What are the cash flows? What's the profit margin? What are the revenues by segment? What is the team performance? But we could also talk about key performance indicators in other ways. Your sales KPI. What does your sales funnel look like? What are the leads being generated? What's the pipeline look like? You can certainly put metrics around that. If you can put metrics around your hiring process. What are our anticipated hiring needs? Do we have seasonality issues? Do we have expected turnover? Are our staff being mentored properly? Do we have issues around performance that needs to be managed? Those are all things related to operations. It doesn't all have to be financial, but the concept is putting metrics in place that are true metrics that measure the outcomes that you're looking for. If you have a goal of increased sales, what are the things that are driving those sales? Looking at the actual sales trend line and just looking at that and responding to that, that may not be the way you would manage increased sales. Just looking at sales increases. What actually would you do to manage sales is go to the entry point. What are our leads? What does our sales funnel look like? So understanding the KPI that drives the results you need, identifying those, which you should be able to do if you're an expert in your business, and and then managing to those metrics and parameters that actually drive the results you need. So we gave a few examples here, but it certainly can be broader than just financial. Obviously, finances is the byproduct of a lot of the things you're doing, but just understanding those things. All right. Moving into stage three, then you've heard me say it several times, redefining what is the owner's role. And one of the things that came to mind as I prepared this, I'm hinting at giving up control, so to speak, and turning all of these various components of operating your business, hiring, sales, customer service, operations, the bookkeeping, the accounting, turning all of that over. Well, it doesn't have to be on day one. You could certainly phase those things in. I talked in the example about the person that was running the business. The wife had other things they were doing, and at some point they realized they wanted to give up certain component of it, so they gave up the accounting aspect to the wife. They then eventually gave up certain operations to the wife and other staff. They gave up some of the sales aspect. The point is doing this in a way that makes sense for you and for everybody. Where they are in their life depends on the demand of the business, et cetera. But understand that when we talk about redefining the owner's role and changing the way you do this business, it doesn't all have to happen on a Monday morning. It can be phased in. But focus, but at some point, what is it that you're doing? You're redefining the owner's role, focusing on how to lead the company, that so that it doesn't depend on you for every decision, so that you could step away if you needed to. What are things that you could be doing? And I would say that is what strong leadership would look like beyond control. So your role, if you haven't figured this out by now, your role is evolving. You're not stepping away. You're stepping into a new level of leadership. You're then trusting the team. Trust is a huge issue. So if you have a mission that places importance not just to quality, not just to responding to all your customer needs, but you're also putting a level of importance on quality staff, then you should be able to put some trust in that team to handle the work. And then you've put guardrails in place, you put systems in place so that you can handle things differently. You're handling the direction, you're handling risk, you're handling vision, you're handling strategy, sure everything gets done. You're changing where you sit on a more regular basis on that organization chart. You're probably moving up, so to speak, in the organization chart to make sure these things are happening. So that is the bulk of my session today. I could end with telling you that many people do this, and I will tell you that if your goal is to eventually step away, you have to put these sort of processes in place. The business owners that I know that struggle with this are those that just are not able to let go, and then they wonder why they're having a hard time getting a loan. They wonder why they can't go on vacation. So those that are growing, that are um, understanding the concept of leadership better, they're the ones that are navigating through this a little more smoothly. I'm not saying easily, but certainly more effectively. And as you step into that, you'll see the benefits of that. I end with a couple things. Quick reminder again: download our free guide. We have a series of guides. The one that currently is current is a further discussion. Excuse me, a further discussion on this topic, and we would appreciate it if you would sign up for that. I'm going to talk next month about the next step. I feel like this is an important enough session that we're gonna talk about this next month, and we're going to talk about some specific details about how to fix bottlenecks, how to integrate additional operations. So I'll leave it at that. Let me check before we sign off here. You can see we do this every 4 weeks. It's always the third Thursday of the month, 10 a.m. Central Time, and we record it obviously so that you can watch these as you at your convenience. Let's see if we have any questions before we sign off. We do would appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to this. That will help with the YouTube algorithm so that more people see these. If you've seen it, give us a chance to let others see it, and we appreciate it. Find us on social media. We're everywhere. We're working on a podcast, like I said, and we're working on further ideas. Feel free to give us ideas. We're very open to that. And feel free, if you don't want to ask any questions here, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to have a conversation. Love it and appreciate it. Hi, Mark. Thank you very much for that. With that, I'm going to sign off. Say thank you very much. Thank you for those listening on our recording eventually. And we will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.